Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to circle back on a case that we've already done a few videos about because it is an immensely important case, a case that is before the United States Supreme Court. And it's a case that essentially, if you take a look at what's going on here, someone's trying to do an end around from our entire legislative process and trying to implement gun control laws on American gun manufacturers through a foreign government. You can't make this stuff up. Well, it appears that the United States House of Representatives has decided to file an amicus brief. We're going to geek out on a little part of it because they actually raise a very good argument. So today, let's slow it all down. Let's geek out for a little bit and let's talk about Congress weighs in on America's most important Second Amendment lawsuit. Okay, hey, real quick, before we get going too far down the road we're going down, let's remember that this video is being brought to us by Sonoran Desert Institute. That's right, get ready to launch your career in the firearms industry today. Get ready to start arming yourself with education today. And most importantly, get ready to start defending the inalienable rights of millions of Americans nationwide, all through education. Listen, Sonoran Desert Institute has a program, certificate, or degree for just about anything that you may desire. So for more information, check them out in the description box below, or easier yet, just visit them at sti.edu. Okay, America, we've talked about this case a handful of times already. We're going to talk about it again. I am talking about Smith and Wesson versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos. Basically, it's Smith and Wesson versus Mexico. Now, as you may recall, the Mexican government decided to sue a multitude of firearms manufacturers, Smith & Wesson being one of them, because their firearms were shockingly ending up in the hands of the cartels, and the cartels were apparently not using these firearms for lawful purposes. Okay. Now, a court threw out the lawsuit against everybody that was not in the state of Massachusetts, but unfortunately, that left Smith & Wesson still on the hook. Then the First Circuit decided, hey, listen, even though Congress passed a law that basically precludes Mexico or really just about anybody from making this kind of lawsuit, we think that this law doesn't necessarily apply here, and so we're going to let Mexico proceed forward with the lawsuit. That was then appealed to the United States Supreme Court, and that's the issue that is before the United States Supreme Court, which is, should this lawsuit even be allowed to live another day? Now, we have already talked about the massive dangers of this type of litigation, and if successful, what a catastrophic impact it would have, not only on the firearms industry, but it could have on other industries trying to be influenced by foreign governments, something for everyone to think about. But in reality, what the United States House of Representatives, who were kind enough to file an amicus brief with the United States Supreme Court, point out is hey, listen, what Mexico and the First Circuit's authorizing here absolutely violates the separation of powers, because the last time we checked, it's Congress that gets to delegate which authorities we have as it relates to firearms, and it's Congress that gets to decide how we're going to regulate firearms, and it's Congress that decides what those regulations will look like. And what Mexico wants here is they want the United States court system to impose on gun manufacturers all these restrictions that Congress is not willing to do. It's a complete end around of the legislative process as set up by the founding fathers of this country, and it is, in fact, a violation of the separation of powers. So the House of Representatives amicus brief argues the following. After careful study, Congress decided that firearms manufacturers ordinarily should not be liable for harms that third-party criminals cause when they use firearms illegally. It thus enacted the Protection Act, which generally bars suits that aim to hold firearms manufacturers liable for such harms. It's akin to saying that you don't get to sue Ford because some drunk driver used a Ford to kill a family in a car accident. Congress did not act this law in a vacuum. Rather, it was reacting to a flurry of lawsuits attempting to hold the firearms industry liable for criminals misusing their products. These suits sought both huge damage awards and injunctive relief that would have imposed new regulations on the firearms industry. However, Congress saw this legal gambit for what it was, an effort to use the judiciary to accomplish policy goals that advocates could not achieve through the legislative process, which is exactly why Congress passed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And the House is correct to point out that, listen, there was this bevy of lawsuits, all of which were meritless because they were basically saying that, hey, some third party decided to do something crazy that was completely illegal, and because of that, we can now hold the manufacturer of an otherwise legal product liable. All right, this is exactly what Mexico is trying to do to the firearms industry, and the First Circuit currently is complicit in it. The Mexican government is now trying to peddle the same scheme. It aims to hold American firearms companies liable for harms that criminal drug cartels have caused in Mexico. And it is asking a federal court to impose regulations, like a requirement for firearms to include certain features that would prevent unauthorized users from firing them, that Congress has declined to adopt. Yes, this is exactly why this statute was passed, but apparently the First Circuit missed that memo. Now, the House of Reps also goes on to point out, this is the poster child for what the Protection Act was meant to prevent. But the court below concluded that the Protection Act does not apply to the Mexican government's complaint. In its view, this suit falls within a narrow statutory exception, one that permits suits against companies that knowingly violate a firearm law if and only if that violation is the proximate cause of the relevant harm. See, and that's where the First Circuit had come down on it, because they believed that even though Smith Wesson was lawfully manufacturing firearms in a lawful fashion and then distributing them to otherwise lawful people, and so that Smith Wesson itself had not engaged in any activity whatsoever that could be deemed unlawful, that they were still the proximate cause of all the Mexican drug cartel violence, and they did so with knowledge that it could likely happen. And because of that, the statute now exempted them. But it requires that the company here actually engage in illegal activity. What is the illegal activity? And then we have what's called the intervening causation issue, which is there are 7 degrees of separation between what Smith & Wesson does and what the drug cartels end up doing. Petitioners themselves have violated no law. They sell lawful products to firearm wholesalers or retail dealers that have the federal government's stamp of approval through government-issued licenses. Yet this may amount to aiding and abetting, according to the court below, because petitioners allegedly know that some of their firearms will end up in cartel hands, yet fail to take action to prevent that. And of course, if this legal theory were to be allowed to stand, where's the end of it? And again, the House GOP points out, this limitless theory would essentially criminalize the sale of any product that has a history of third-party misuse, and it lacks support in this court's precedent. Nor is any purported legal violation by firearms companies the proximate cause of the damage that the cartels cause. And so, yeah, in addition to this absolutely ludicrous proximate cause argument, which could be used to completely shut down the firearms industry, it could also be used to shut down the automobile industry, the tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, the watercraft industry, or anything else which can be misused and therefore dangerous not by design but by use. Yes, this theory would actually tackle all of them. But the scariest part here is what the Mexican government is asking. And what the First Circuit is willing to essentially sign off on is they're asking the courts to take place of Congress and to regulate the firearms industry as the Mexican government sees fit. The House of Representatives amicus brief states, the Mexican government, at bottom, is trying to dragoon the judiciary into exercising legislative power. It is asking the lower court to impose regulations that Congress has consistently refrained from enacting. Such an outcome would run afoul of the separation of powers and is exactly what Congress sought to prevent when it passed the Protection Act. Affirming the judgment below would therefore gut the Protection Act and threaten our constitutional order. The court should reverse the First Circuit's decision. Listen, there is a lot more to the amicus brief than what we shared with you. We're going to link it all up down below so that you guys can geek out on it for yourself. Once again, the case is Smith & Wesson Brands Incorporated et al. Versus Estados Unidos Mexicanos. We'll link up all of the information down there below, as well as a couple other videos that we've already done about this case. If you got any questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information's down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, cool. Tell us all about it by clicking on that link right there. If you just want to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, the ability to do all of that is right down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, let's everyone remember That part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.